So far, our focus has been on non-renewable sources of energy, such as fossil fuels and nuclear, that will eventually be used up. However, the focus recently has been on shifting to more renewable sources of energy that will continuously that can continuously be used. So, renewable energy is energy that comes from sources that are being formed over and over again, that are continuously coming towards us. Solar energy, which is energy from the sun in the form of light and heat, is one form of energy that continuously remakes itself. And if the sun were to ever run out of energy, we'd have bigger problems on our hands than electrical devices. Wind energy comes from the kinetic, the motion energy of wind moving around. And since wind always seems to blow, at least in some areas, then we can use that kinetic energy to turn the turbines. Moving water flows. There's a hydrologic cycle where the water keeps evaporating and condensing and falling back to earth. So water will always be moving somewhere. And then the heat of the earth from the inside of the earth's interior, molten and boiling, all that energy coming out can be used to generate electricity or to heat our homes. Lots of countries are working to increase the use of renewable resources of energy while decreasing our dependence on sources that would eventually disappear. So let's start with solar. Solar energy has been used as long as we've had plants upon the earth. So you can think of photosynthesis as the original use of solar energy. We take sunlight and we photosynthesize, we create glucose, plants do, not we. Plants create glucose from that sunlight reacting with the carbon dioxide and the oxygen in the air and water and turning it into glucose there. So we're taking light energy and turning it into chemical energy. Now, another very easy way of using the sunlight in our favor is solar heating. Now, passive solar heating is pretty simple. It's just a way of building a building, whether it's a house or an office or whatever it may be, to use that sun's energy to heat the home, to take advantage of the solar radiation. So here's a house up north, and in the winter months, the sunlight is real low in the horizon. And so this would be in the northern hemisphere. So when the light is low angle, then it's going to come in through these windows here and heat the home. In the summer, when you don't want the home to be too warm, the sun is more overhead at a higher angle. And you can see the angle of incidence here. It does not go in the windows. It's blocked by the roof of the home. So it allows for heat in the winter when you want it, and it blocks heat in the summer when you don't. We can also use active solar heating, which is using energy from the sun to heat water, and then that water is pumped through the home to heat it. So up here, this is solar panels, but this water heater right here, that solar collector would warm up, you see the boiler there, it would warm up the water, and then the water would be pumped through the home to heat it. But what you're thinking of, I'm sure, when we talk about solar energy is actually photovoltaic cells. Photovoltaic cells convert the sun's energy into electricity. They have a strip of silicon, and that silicon, when light hits it, an electron is discharged, and that electron tries to flow back to the silicon where it can be put back into the hole that's created. So that flow of an electron is electrical current. Advantages of the solar panels that it doesn't have any moving parts. It's literally just a panel. So therefore there's no pollution, nothing's being burned. It's very useful in developing countries where you may not be on a grid, an electrical power grid. You're not connected, you're very far out. So very rural areas, whether it's in America or a different country, would do well with photocells because you can do them anywhere. Problems with photocells, though, are that they produce very little current per panel. You have to have a lot of panels to produce enough current to power a neighborhood or a city, which a lot of panels takes up a lot of area. It's very expensive to put in that many panels. It's very expensive per panel, honestly. And you have to be in an area where you have lots of sunshine. So the desert, Areas that are in the mid latitudes do well, but when you get really high latitudes or you get areas where it's rainy a lot, or around here we have so many trees, if the trees are blocking it, then it doesn't work very well. So there's a YouTube video here we're going to watch and then come back and we'll move on. Okay, so here's what they were talking about in the video, how those electrons are freed and then they try to move from one side to the other and get back to where they need to be. If there's no sunlight, if we block it off, then no electrons are freed and we have no current produced. So we can install panels on top of homes. We can install panels in the middle of fields, like the one that's out by Mr. Edgman's office. I've even seen them put solar panels on parking garages where people can park underneath them, and it provides shade for the car as well as takes that electrical energy and converts it into electricity, the solar energy, and converts it to electricity. All right, wind power. Wind turbines turn when the wind pushes them. So you've got the motion of the wind, gets a hold of those big fan blades and spins them around. And inside, here's what the inside of a fan blade looks like. There's that little gear there, and there's our turbine, which turns the generator, which again is a magnet and a coil of wire. Still the same thing. Solar panels are pretty much the only ones that don't have this turbine magnet generator setup here. So the wind blows the blades, turns the turbine, just like everything else. The advantages are that wind is pretty abundant. You're not going to use it up. And the turbines, for the most part, take up very little space. In fact, you could have maybe a cattle ranch underneath. You could grow corn underneath, in between all of these different windmills. You could still use the land for something else. Some problems, however, how do you get that electricity in rural areas? Because these are typically put up in rural areas. You don't have a lot of them in the middle of cities. How do you get them to the urban areas where we actually need the electricity? So that transportation is one that they're trying to work on to make wind energy more feasible and more beneficial. So here's again another little YouTube video that shows you how a wind turbine works, and then we'll come back and continue talking. All right, so biomass, we're burning it for fuel, so it sounds a lot like coal, oil, and natural gas, except it hasn't been buried and compressed that long. This is using plant material, fresh plant material, manure, or other organic matter as an energy source. A lot of homes use firewood. In fact, in our developing nations, biomass is one of your primary fuels that they use, is burning logs and limbs to heat their homes and cook their food. Some power plants have actually taken this to the next level. If you have wood pellets, wood shavings that are left over from a lumber industry or a paper mill, or you see down here there's sawdust, there's grass that's left over, corn cobs left over from corn production. If you take these pieces that are left over from another production, compress it into a pellet and burn that, then you can generate electricity from biomass. Another biomass, which falls into that category, is the use of methane. Methane is produced when bacteria decomposes organic waste. So think landfills or feedlots where you have a lot of manure. They produce a lot of methane. If you capture that methane and burn it for electricity or heating or cooking, then you're taking something that's produced anyway and putting it to good use. And finally, another type of biomass is alcohols. Alcohols are produced from fermenting biologic materials, possibly like in this case, corn. A few years ago, we had a big shift to ethanol gasoline. You may have seen this at your pump, ethanol being involved in gasoline. And that was a combination of gasoline and alcohol, what they call gasohol. The idea is that it produces less pollution. It's more renewable, and eventually we required a certain amount of ethanol in our gasoline. All right, let's shift a little bit and talk about hydroelectricity. So hydroelectricity is electricity that is produced from moving water. Now, there's a couple of different ways to do that. About 20% of the world's electricity comes from hydroelectricity, and this is one way of producing it. You see here we have a hydroelectric dam, and the dam has backed up what was a river and created a reservoir or a man-made lake. And so as it backs up the water builds up pressure and gravitational potential energy. When the water is allowed to flow through the dam, it's pushed with all of that water pressure by that built up potential energy, pushes through here. And again, here we go. Our turbine spins the generator, which is a magnet in a coil of wire, and it creates electricity. So a hydroelectric dam is still a turbine and a generator. It's just now falling water is making that turbine spin instead of steam. So benefits, it's pretty cheap. Once you build the actual dam itself, operations are very cheap. You just let the water go. There's no pollution that's preserved. Pollution that's produced. They last a long time, and you can actually get secondary benefits like flood control, water for drinking and agriculture, recreation. You can have boating and industry. But there's always problems that go with it, right? Some of the problems are that you get changes in a river's flow. Normally, your rivers have seasonal flooding, which brings in new fresh nutrients to the land on either side of it, and that doesn't happen where you have that flooding controlled. The habitat above your dam is flooded. It's now a lake. And so you get a different type of fish that lives in lakes than lives in rivers, disrupts the ecosystem. You could have dam breaks. So dams occasionally will wear out and break and leak and potentially could be a catastrophic leak. And then you don't get that seasonal flooding of new nutrients. So a new trend, a different way of doing this, instead of damming up the river and creating a reservoir, is using a thing called micro hydropower, which is putting almost like a paddle wheel, putting it in a small section of the creek, not without having to completely back it up, or letting the river channel through this turbine without having to completely back it up and create a reservoir. So here's a video real quick about hydroelectricity. All right, and geothermal, if you think geo means earth, therm means heat, so it's earth heat. We're using the heat from the Earth's crust, to generate steam, and then again, steam turns a turbine turns a generator. It's a magnet and a coil of wire. So it's all about how you spin that generator. In this case, that steam, instead of being produced from nuclear energy or from burning fossil fuels, that steam is coming from hot water from down in the earth. So another way, kind of like we had passive and active solar heating, another way we can get geothermal, maybe to not produce electricity, but to heat our homes, is using a heat pump. In the summer, the ground is cooler than air. In the winter, it's warmer than air because down underneath, it's protected from the weather that's going on above. So if we pump water underground to circulate through the home, then it tends to be a more steady temperature. It tends to be warmer in the winter and colder in the summer. So here's information about geothermal heat pumps. We'll watch that real quick, and then we'll come back. All right, so that is it. You have looked at all of our renewable resources. We'll talk about the pros and cons of each and make some decisions about what you think is the best one.